Hello, brothers and sisters. Welcome to this session of Education Week. This is the history of the church in Mongolia. I'm Brother Filipe Chou. I have a PhD from BYU, and I am a religion professor at BYU, Hawaii, and excited to be here.
I'm Petra Chou, and I got my doctorate from the Utah State University, and I'm an adjunct professor at BYU, Hawaii, teaching Mandarin Chinese.
So we're really excited to share with you the history of the church in Mongolia in this 4-day series here at Education Week. Today, we'll be talking about the first missionaries and their arrival in Mongolia. The period we're covering is 1984 to 1995. You can see on Wednesday, we'll talk about the Mongolia mission and the church educational system. On Thursday, we'll talk about the gathering place. Talking about some of the buildings and some of the events that help with the gathering of Israel in Mongolia, as well as the translation of the Mongolian scriptures.
And on Friday, we will talk about the first day in Mongolia and the Desert International Charities, about the period from 2007 on.
All right, so we're just going to jump right in. Give you a little background about Mongolia first. Mongolia is a little country that is maybe not so little, but it's sandwiched right between Russia in the north and China in the south. And there is a great number of people in there. Mongolia is known as the land of the eternal blue sky because of the beautiful blue sky that's there.
And then the capital of Mongolia is Ulaanbaatar. Some people refer to UB. And in Mongolia, and about more than half of the population believe in Buddhism. About 39% they don't believe in any religion. 3% about Muslim, and 3% believe in shamanism, and only 2% about they believe in Christianity.
So you can see that our church is a segment of Christianity, so a very, very small percentage of the people in Mongolia are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Mongolia is about 605,000 square miles, which is roughly about 7 times the size of Utah.
And then also is a Mongol empire is founded by Genghis Khan in 1206.
Yeah, and I think most people, when they talk about Mongolia, Genghis Khan and his warriors on horsebacks and shooting arrows and so forth. It was back then the largest empire throughout the world.
They were also known for their famous horsemen, archery, and their famous warriors as well.
Yeah, so just a little bit more about Mongolia. That's a huge countryside. Many are living a nomadic life. More recently, the cities have been growing, and so more people are moving to large cities like the UB. But there's still the nomadic life is really part of the culture. They live in gers. You can see a picture of here on the right. There's a ger, several gers there, and they will move that with the herd. On the picture on the left here, you can see the countryside here, and they have various livestocks. They've got horses, they've got cows, yaks, they've got goats and sheep. And cashmere from Mongolia is pretty famous.
And then one time when we were traveling in Mongolia in about 5 years ago, 2018, and the first time we were in Ulaanbaatar, and our friend of us took us to see some goat in the mountain. And then we were on the road. The road it was paved, but it was a little bit bumpy. And all of a sudden, he go off like on the hill. You can see the picture on the left. There's no road on the hill, but he would just go on and on the hill. And I guess it was legal in Mongolia. Even though it's not a paved road, you could just go wherever you want, I guess.
Yeah, so basically if you want to go camping, you just pull off somewhere on the side of the road and just make camp. There is no camp fee or anything like that. You just find a spot. And so you will see as you're driving, families here and there that just pulled off to the side of the road, having breakfast or lunch and just enjoying being in the outdoors. There's also a ger district, several throughout Ulaanbaatar as well as other cities in Mongolia. You can see here on the left this is a picture of a ger district in UB, Mongolia from 1994. And then on the right, a few children here outside the ger. Now, so that gives you a little background about Mongolia. Now we want to jump into some of the history or some of the things that happened before actually the missionaries got there. So paving the road or the way for missionary work and for the gospel to come into Mongolia.
And then one of the person we have to mention is that way before Mongolia was dedicated for the gospel. And in 1984, before Brother Brock is how you say it, he was called in the presidency, and he loved to take his sons go on a hunting trip in different countries. Especially he took his son to Mongolia, and he fell in love with the people and the place very much. And then he, at that time, there was no gospel in Mongolia. And Monty Boro and would play a huge role in bringing the gospel of Jesus Christ to Mongolia.
And you have to understand, this is back in 1984. So when Monty Burrow and his sons, and he took two of his sons, one had just finished his mission, the one had gone on a trip, and they set on this hunting trip to Mongolia. And so let me read a little bit about his journal and that trip. When they had, they flew into Ulaanbaatar, and this was, there was like nothing around. This was their international airport, if you will, right? So just a little bit about that. In his journal, Brother Burrow writes, the Ulaanbaatar National Airport is a one-room wood shack, just out in the middle of nowhere, just a little wood shack. Outside is a runway, asphalt. It's just a little narrow runway, that is it. There's nothing more. He continues, I was standing there looking at this, and the interpreter came up to me and said, this is the international airport. I bet you don't have anything like this in America. I said, you're right, we don't. And in a moment, here came another man. He looked like an airport captain to me. He was dressed up in a uniform and said, Mongolia Airlines. He said, would you help me fuel the plane? I said, well, yes, I guess so. I found myself pumping the fuel in that airplane. Then there was a woman that looked like a flight attendant to me. She said, would you help me load the food on the plane and the luggage? So we loaded the luggage on the plane and got food on, and this was the airport in Mongolia. And so they would get there, and then they will fly to their next spot, just find a piece of grass, and then they would just move on during this hunting trip. And at one point, his boy was sitting on the hill, and then Brother Burrow came up to his son and, asked him, what's going on? What are you thinking about? And again, here from his journal, he says, my 12-year-old said, Dad, it kind of makes you feel important, doesn't it? And Brother Burrow's response was, what? What do you mean? And then continues here. To the south of us is China with its billion people, and to the north is Russia with 300 million. And you feel important. His words to his dad, well, Dad, aren't we the only ones that know about Joseph Smith? And aren't we the only ones that know about the Book of Mormon? Suddenly, Brother Burroughs shares, a mountaintop in Mongolia, of all places, I receive another witness of who we are and what we have to do. We know how important the gospel is to all the inhabitants of this earth. And so Brother Burrow just kind of fell in love with the country during this trip with his boys. And then years later, he'd be called to serve as a General Authority 70, and then he would serve in the Asia area presidency and be a great influence to bring the missionaries into Mongolia.
Yes. I just want to give you a little bit more reference about the airport in Mongolia. When we traveled in 2018, there was only one international airport in UB. That airport have only one check-in counter for every airline and only have 4 exit doors to go to your plane. And there's no ramp to go to your plane. You have to walk out and walk up the stairs to your plane. But you went to the airport, but they have a new airport this year, right?
Yeah, and so the new Genghis Khan airport that we were just at this year has just changed tremendously. From instead of walking out on the tarmac to get on a plane, you've got a terminal and everything.
Okay. And also, before the missionary came into Mongolia, there's some connection between BYU and Mongolia. And they have some visiting Mongolian official, and also one important person that BYU Paul hired. And then he took one of the Mongolian to facilitate a tour of BYU in Mongolia.
So this is our BYU Mongolia connection, right? Brother Professor Heyer that wanted to invite the ambassador to speak at BYU. He's worked with another scholar, Mongolian by the name of Sechin Jakchid. And together they work together on this. So they have coordinated conversations on the phone with the Mongolia embassy, arranged the trip, and then with the ambassador coming to BYU to speak at a devotional, that connection was made that provided and paved the way for the church to be able to enter Mongolia. This is from Paul Heyer's records, 6th of December, 1991. He says, because of the delay in obtaining the invitation for church representatives to visit Mongolia, Paul Heyer sent a letter to former ambassador Nyamdo, addressed to him in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So this is after the BYU devotional and Paul Heyer making a connection for the church with the ambassador's office and sending letters back and forth, sending faxes back and forth to be able to make that connection and to connect church leaders with the embassy of Mongolia. By 1992 then, the connection is made and there is an exploratory visit to Mongolia.
And Elder Merlin Lambert and then Monty Barr of the area, Asia area presidency make their first visit in 1992 to Mongolia.
And they work with government officials trying to explore what they could do to help the government. And this was right after Mongolia has become independent. It was a former Soviet Union satellite country. And so now with their independence, there was some disarray in the government. They're trying to reset the government. And so there was an opportunity for the church to help with the Minister of Education, to help them with their educational system and higher ed. And so these two members of the Asia Area Presidency, members of the 70, visited to try to work out a plan. But they had some struggles trying to help the government officials understand. And as they visit with the, at one point when they went back, they'll try to just figure out what's the status of our proposal. They were able to visit with the ambassador, Nyanjing, and then talk to him.
And at that time, Nyanji has have a question for them. It's like, okay, I understand how now you're going to send this missionary couples. They will teach English, business, education, and they come at their own expenses. And why do they do that?
And he was so confused. He couldn't understand who would help us come at their own pennies and dollars, right? Come on their own, pay for their expenses to help us. Why do you do that? Elder Burrow had a great response.
He said, we are all children of God. We are brothers and sisters.
And so as a result of that meeting then, they were able to receive approval to bring the first 6 couple missionaries into Mongolia to help teach English, but also they were free to share the gospel.
Yeah.
And not just English, right? Because they had teach all kinds of courses.
Yeah, they are talented couples, I would say, and then they are approved to assist with the Mongolia higher education. They serve in different universities, about 5 universities, and some technical institute as well. They teach medicine, education, finance, and also English as well.
And let me just add a little bit. Elder Burrow really worked really hard because when their initial proposal went and they weren't able to meet anyone, the area presidency didn't know what to do. And so they assigned Elder Burrow to just fly to Mongolia. So just going by faith, he got on a plane and then flew in to try to figure out, how are we going to arrange with the missionaries and the government and so forth. So here from his journal, He says, when I got off the plane at the airport, this is the airport in Mongolia, I desperate, hoping somebody would be there to meet me. They had sent letters to the government, but no response, right? And so he arrives there at the airport and nothing. Nobody's there, right? And then after waiting there for 30 minutes, then he accounts, a young woman came up to me and say, Mr. Braga, Mr. Braga, I've heard my name pronounced a lot of ways and I recognize that as a Mongolia pronunciation. I am Mr. Bro, he said. She then said in her broken English, come with me. And she took him to the hotel. And so he tried to explain to him, did you receive the letters? Is there a government official? And he couldn't speak Mongolian. She couldn't speak very good English. And so they couldn't figure out what each other were trying to say. And then there was a moment in the hotel room then, and this is where I see the hand of God in this work, right? Where it's not the work of man, but the work of God. And we need the Lord's help in this. And so while sitting in the hotel room, not having any connections, Elder Burrow got on his knee. He said, there was a moment in the hotel room in Ulaanbaatar when I felt beyond anything that I knew and understood that I had a situation that was totally beyond my capacity, understanding and knowledge to solve. Yet I deeply felt that Heavenly Father wanted us to be there. And I recounted that feeling I had in 1984 and the years before when I traveled there with my sons. So in a great moment, a wonderful moment, one we all should have when we are beyond anything we know, I got on my knees and asked for God's help. In a wonderful prayer, I pleaded with him for help and guidance. And then the impression he got was, call Nien. This is a person that they have met in previous trips. And so with the help of the front desk, they look at the phone directory, found his name, were able to call. And then continuing here, Elder Burrow says, Mr. Nien, are you there? And his response, Mr. Burrow, you in Mongolia? We think you never come. And Elder Burrow learned that the letters that they have sent to the government were never received. But with the help of Nien, they were able to, within an hour, make appointments with the rector of the University of Mongolia, with the Economic College, with the College of Medicine, and with other government officials. And so within a couple of days, they had secure agreements with all those people, including Angtovishen, who was the Minister of Education at that time, that these missionaries would come, and all fell into place because of a humble servant of the Lord, kneeling in a hotel in a foreign country, trying to figure out and pleading with the Lord to know what to do, and having that impression to call Nien.
Yes. And then because of the effort that they have the agreement with the government, and the first 6 couple missionaries were sent to Ulaanbaatar in 1992.
And you can see a picture of them here. On the top left is Elder and Sister Beasley, who were set apart in Salt Lake by President Packer to be the lead missionaries and the branch president in Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia, before they flew to Mongolia. And let me maybe just share a little bit about the experience of the missionaries here. I love the story from one of the missionary couples that was sent. So this is from one of the 6 couples before they went to Mongolia. So one of the missionary couples relate the following. When our state president called us into his office late in the summer of 1992, he explained that the Lord had a special call for us to serve in Outer Mongolia. Will you accept the call? And of course they said, yes, they would serve wherever the Lord wanted to call them. This couple replied, of course, if the Lord has called us, we will serve. But now tell us, where are we really going? Where are we really called to serve? And then the state president responded firmly, I am not kidding you. It is a call to Mongolia. And so with their faith, they packed their bags, and these missionaries then set out to go to Mongolia. Some of them have never been outside the United States before, let alone going all the way to the other side of the world to serve the Lord and his children in Mongolia.
I think they must be really surprised because Mongolia at that time, there was no missionary work. No missionaries has been sent there before. But when they got a call, probably they were like, was amazed how the gospel was going to preach in Mongolia. And you can see Sister Smith and Brother Smith, and later on Sister Smith would serve as a Relief Society president in Mongolia.
Yeah, and Elder Burrow mentions that because there is no mission yet established in Mongolia, these first 6 couple missionaries will be serving under the Asia Area Presidency.
Okay, at that time, the living condition in Mongolia was not that great. And these missionaries, couple missionaries, were placed in the building called Building 7. Later on, we'll show you some picture about that. But this missionary was called to assist the higher education. And you can see at that time in their little apartment is the limited resources that they had. They didn't have any internet. They didn't have any maybe cell phone to help them to communicate. And also they didn't know the language at all. And then they have to start preaching the gospel in Mongolia. You could see how much faith and how much sacrifice they had in bringing the gospel to the Mongolian saints.
And so this during a time when there is no smartphones, there's no cell phones, there's a landline, but it's not a landline to the apartment of the missionaries, right? They have to go down the street to find a landline to communicate. Elder Burrow shares the following. He says, I quote, Mongolia had no communication systems when we first went there. We had to go to the hotel, stand in line, pay our money, and use a very antique telephone to reach the outside world. And then because of Nanjing's apartment, we were able to establish a telephone link between headquarters in Hong Kong and Brother Beasley in Nanjing's apartment. We then obtained some fax machines. They didn't find any, so we had to send a staff person up from Hong Kong to install a fax machine in Nanjing's apartment. And that fax machine that became their communication between the missionaries in UB, Mongolia, and the area office in Hong Kong.
And then at that time, the first branch was organized, and Elder Beasley was called as the president, and Elder Richard and Elder Smith were called to be the first and second counselors as well. And at that time, they were usually met at their apartment for the church meeting because there was no official chapel or church building at that time.
Yes. And the other thing is they taught the whole various courses. Here is an experience from them. Elders Beasley held seminaries for the Ministry of Science and Education with universities, a technical university, and several business colleges. He also taught English classes. Donna, his wife, taught English at the Russian Mongolia Secondary School No. 3 and tutored students outside class. Richard Harper taught psychology and English, consulted with the Vice President of Academics of Science. His wife, Anna, taught English, gave TOEFL review sessions. This is the test of English as foreign language. And then Stanley B. Smith taught English and business classes, and his wife, Margarine, taught English at the Russian Mongolia Secondary School No. 3. So you can see a variety here. Royce P. Flandreau consulted regarding curriculum, faculty evaluation, distance learning. His wife, Jane, taught classes on how to start and manage small businesses. The Smith lectured at the Medical University and rewrote the Mongolia textbook on pulmonary diseases and donated medical books and journals and some medicine to the Medical University. And his wife, Alice, taught English. Gary Carlson taught computer systems and donated a large library of computer books and journals, software and hardware to the Technical University. And his wife, Barbara, taught English classes, contributed a large number of library books and teaching materials to the Otkon Tengger Foreign Language Institute and established an ESL, or English as a Second Language library from the missionaries there.
So most of the missionary effort at that time is to teach English to the Mongolian, because at that time most of the Mongolians speak Russian, but not English. So through this teaching the English class, they were able to find some investigators.
And so that's what they did during the week. And then on the weekend, of course, there was church. So at Building 7 in Elder Bisley's apartment, then they put a makeshift chapel, if you will. They found an old table, cut up some of the legs, put a little pulpit, and then in the living room of their apartment, they had a little pulpit here to be able to have church meetings.
And you can see the building on the left is more like a Soviet-style apartments there.
Mm-hmm. So this is building number 7 where the missionaries would live. And then on the right here is another picture of the UB city. So you can see that there are several similar-like buildings, and they happen to be assigned to Building 7. Now, besides the branch presidency, then, of course, one of the besides teaching English, one of the struggles they had was to learn the language, right? These missionaries did not speak Mongolian. However, they met many young people who spoke English at the university, and so university students became their first investigators.
And these students were so eager to learn English and also with the gospel as well. And then the missionary couples, they also helped organize the branch presidency and also the Relief Society in Mongolia.
So we talked about the branch presidency, but we want to touch a little more about the Relief Society.
And then the first Relief Society is organized in Mongolia with Sister Marjorie Smith in 1993 as a president. And then in her journal, she wrote, "What a responsibility to be the very first to serve in that position in a country. This is the 3rd time I have served in this position, but never before as quite such a pioneer." She said pioneer is real pioneer. At that time, Mongolia is a very nomadic country as well. Probably they didn't have any Costco or Walmart. They wouldn't get what they used to get in America. So these couple missionaries sacrificed their comfort to serve in Mongolia and help preach the gospel, or at least to set the tone before the young missionaries come in Mongolia later on.
So once the Relief Society and Branch Presidency is organized, you have the 6 missionaries there, or 6 missionary couples. And then they have their first baptism. These were students that they had. The first 2 Mongolian baptisms were Perus, Suveran, and Batuzil. They start taking discussion with Elder Smith and Elder Harper. They were, according to the Elder and Sister Smith's recount in their journal, they're very special spirits and were able to feel the Spirit of the Lord in what they were learning. When they finished one discussion, they stood up and said, "We feel so good." Elder Smith told them that what they were feeling was the Holy Ghost letting them know that what they were learning was the truth. And so Purusaram becomes the first member of the church in Mongolia, baptized by Elder Smith, and he will later be one of the first Mongolians to help with the sacrament.
And Elder Harper baptized by Uzi, and later on he was served as a branch president of the Tours branch in Mongolia.
And you can see in this picture then that on the 2 sides in white are the 2 missionaries, Elder Smith and Elder Harper, and then in the center there, so the second from the right is Purusaran, and then the one with glasses sitting down there is Batuzi.
Okay, and there's also a sister that got baptized. Her name is Sylvia. She was baptized on May 8, 1993.
And so she's the 3rd convert of the church in Mongolia, but the first sister to be baptized.
She also was the first Mongolian to serve as Relief Society president on January 9, 1994. She was, just like any newcomer, she was so eager with the gospel. She loved to share the gospel, so she was actively share the gospel with her friends and family.
And she would often go with the missionaries on splits to help them translate, because the missionaries still were working on their Mongolian, and many of the Mongolians did not speak English. So Sylvia and her friend were always very good to go with the missionaries and help. But when she got called to be the Relief Society president, so this is after, of course, the senior missionary sisters had served as Relief Society president. Sylvia became the first Mongolian to serve as Relief Society president. She was just really scared, right? But the missionaries were willing to help her and coach her and mentor her and help her. And she was a great blessing serving as the Relief Society president in Mongolia, in blessing many of the saints, many of the sisters there in the branch.
Okay. Also, in January 16, 1994, our Karmak of the area, Asian area presidency visited and then preside over the first branch conference. And then some of the first few brothers got baptized. They received the Melchizedek priesthood, including Perusaran and Bartlosi, and then they also received the Melchizedek priesthood.
Yeah, so at this branch conference, the first in Mongolia, 4 brothers were sustained to be conferred on Melchizedek priesthood and receive the office of an elder.
And this family is very famous in Mongolia.
They're the first family of Mongolia.
Yes, to be sealed. Anyway, Brother Artavishan, he was baptized in Germany in June 1993. And then when he returned to Mongolia, he wanted to bring the gospel to his family. So his wife and his, you can see 3 children at the time, they were at the age of 8. They were baptized first. And then later on, the youngest 2 daughters also got baptized later on.
So this is the first family, and we'll talk more about them in another session. This is the first family to go to the temple together, to be sealed as an eternal family. Now, with the church growing, then, of course, the first president, the Quorum of 12, have decided then that it was time to send an apostle to dedicate Mongolia for the preaching of the gospel.
Yes, and Elder New Age Maxwell dedicated Mongolia for preaching gospel on April 14, 1993. And he was accompanied by Sister Maxwell and Elder and Sister Dai Guoyuan.
And Elder Tao, of course, is the first Chinese general authority of the church. But so they've traveled there, and then they found a location for the dedication.
And then the location, there is a little bit hill up, is a monument there, and then it took place on Sai Sen. And then at that time, about 30 people attended the dedication, including new converts and investigators as well. And then during the prayer, they quoted, "I dedicate the land of Mongolia and bless its leaders and people, its soils and its sky, all to the end that the nation may be blessed, that you will so respond to the gospel message so that thy work may be firmly established here. May Mongolia even be a beacon of light to other nations."
And so with this apostolic blessing, Elder Maxwell dedicated Mongolia for the preaching of the gospel. He turns those apostolic keys to allow the gospel to be shared. And this wonderful blessing that he gave during the dedication just reminds me of the role of prophets and apostles and the unique role that apostles have as witnesses, special witnesses of the Lord Jesus Christ. And their keys to be able to turn the keys for the preaching of the gospel in Mongolia. Here you have a picture then. On the left, this is Sister and Elder Maxwell. Okay, if I'm looking at the picture on the left, from left to right, Sister Maxwell, Elder Maxwell, and then Elder and Sister Dai at this hill, Saizan Hill, where they were dedicated the country for preaching the gospel.
In 1993. And then you can see the pictures on the right, and all those members, newcomers, investigators, they were all excited for the dedications of Mongolia for the preaching of the gospel as well.
And so after that, what we have then is, besides those 6 missionary couples, the church will send the first 6 new young elders. They'll arrive in Mongolia on August 14, 1993.
Actually, they were originally called to Russia and Ukraine, and then they were reassigned while they were at the MTC in Provo. And then they have to quickly learn a new language, and then they need to concentrate on missionary work and learn about the culture and the people in Mongolia before they go to Mongolia.
And the church will then concentrate missionary efforts just in the capital of Ulaanbaatar. So here's a picture of the first 6 elders that came from left to right. Elders Dwayne Blanchard, Bart Birch, Brett Henson, Bradley Pearson, Jared Muir, D. Mortensen.
These 6 elders started continue to start to preach the gospel in Mongolia, and then continue to investigate through friends, through members, through proselyting effort.
And so the church outgrew the missionary apartment where they were holding church. And so as a result, the missionaries then contacted and got permission to rent a room at the State Central Library. And so church meetings moved from the apartment to a room in the Central Library in Ulaanbaatar. And here's a picture of the missionaries and the members, some investigators who were there for a special Christmas devotional in December 1993, a Christmas sacrament meeting, if you will.
This is also a pattern for starting the gospel in a new country. Usually you start with a little apartment of the elders, of the missionaries, and then they will move to a rented place, and then eventually the church will build their own chapels over there.
And then the church sent 6 additional young missionaries. So now you have 12. Picture here, sitting in front center, is Elder and Sister Tai from the Asia Area Presidency, who had come for a special zone conference, and their picture here with those 12 missionaries.
Okay. And also, after the missionary effort has been established, usually some key church material need to be translated into Mongolian for the things to understand. With the help of David Phelps from the translation committee, and then he visited in December 1993, September 1993 in Mongolia. And then some of the church like sacrament prayer, baptismal prayer, and Joseph Smith's stories, and then some missionary discussions and gospel foundational manuals.
And as well as the name of the church, right? Had to be translated into Mongolian.
Yes, and then also the sacrament also blessed in the Mongolia for the first time on August 10, 1993.
October
1993.
Yeah, and so this is previously the missionaries will bless the sacrament in English. And so now with the translation of the sacrament prayer, they're able to then start blessing the sacrament in Mongolian. And so the reference for the stories that we've read come from our book, The Voice of the Saints in Mongolia. Here, picture to the right is my wife and I in 2018 when we visited the Saisan Hill, where the Elder Maxwell, Elder Tai, and their spouses were there for the dedication. And so it's just humbling for us to be there during the few years ago to walk where an apostle of the Lord walked and prayed and dedicated the country of Mongolia for the preaching of the gospel.
And how the gospel was preached in Mongolia, actually, it takes a lot of miracles to happen. And the Lord is in the details of details of details. And it's not a coincidence that Elder Brock was able to find, after his prayer, we found Nien, and he was able to bring in started with some couple missionary works with helping with the teaching in the higher institute. And this is not a coincidence. This is a divine destination that the Lord knows how to put people in the right place at the right time to hasten his work. And Mongolia is one of the great examples. And I think why Mongolia is sandwiched between Russia and China at that time. And then in this little country, it was before Russia, before China, it was the gospel was be able to preach in this wonderful, wonderful Mongolia.
And this is what we call the Mongolian miracle, right? Like my wife said, there are no coincidences. As we research and gather information about the history of the church in Mongolia, we've come to see the Mongolian miracle, where there are really no coincidences, but as the Lord would call it, divine appointments, right, that our prophets have referred to. And we see this happening throughout this history. We just bear witness that this is the work of the Lord. The hand of God is in this work, and to bring the gospel to the wonderful, wonderful people of Mongolia. And we share this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
And we look forward to seeing you on our next session. Thank you.
Thank you.